think everybody in Europe must understand how crazy the United States is right now. And I've been trying to say this for many years to friends in Europe. Be careful of the United States. It's a weird place. The political system doesn't function anymore. It is not acting in Europe's interest. And I've been saying this for many years, usually to a fair bit of skepticism, I must say. People thought that Joe Biden was Europe's friend, for example. This was not the case. The language was a little bit better, the body language, the claims of the Western alliance and all the rest. But the United States was not functional in a way that was serving Europe's interests. The United States, for 30 years, was mainly pursuing wars and militarism, expanding NATO, overthrowing governments, having relentless wars in the Middle East, creating tensions with Russia that had no constructive purpose at all. The idea was in the United States that the U.S. ran the show. The American officials called it American primacy. Other people called it American unipolarity. Other people called it American hegemony. But that was the model, that the U.S. would do what it wants and that it would be able to do what it wants anywhere in Iraq or Afghanistan or Syria or Ukraine. In the case of Ukraine, what America wanted was a pro-Western regime that would welcome U.S. military bases in Ukraine so that Ukraine would be ours, not theirs. Theirs meaning Russia. And this is the approach that the United States followed. It overthrew a government, or at least participated in the overthrow of a government in 2014, and it relentlessly pushed NATO enlargement until the Russians said no way, and it expanded a conflict that started with the coup in 2014 into an open war in 2022. When Ukraine in 2022 said, okay, we'll be neutral, the United States told them, no, you won't. You will fight on. And so even a peace agreement that was reached almost exactly 3 years ago this month, that you can find online, for April 2022, the United States rejected peace. Now, where does Europe come into all of this? Europe increasingly just played along with the United States. Europe more and more created leaders who said, we follow the United States. Brussels became an appendage of the United States. American lobbying in Brussels became nonstop. To become head of the European Commission essentially required American approval. And Europe lost its way by confusing Europe and NATO. They became exactly the same thing. In fact, both housed in Brussels, which added to the confusion. And even more, the president of the European Commission actually thought it would be a promotion if she went from heading the Commission to heading NATO. She tried to be head of NATO. I can't imagine a worse job choice in the world than to go from head of Europe to head of NATO. But in the twisted values in Brussels, going to be head of NATO was a promotion compared to being head of the European Commission. This is how messed up everything became. And unfortunately, Europe is still messed up. And it's very confused now because now we have a president who is absolutely obnoxious, and dangerous, not just senile, but really dangerous. He's single-handedly destroying the world trade system by ranting and raving about his dictatorial powers, which, by the way, don't exist. He's just violating the Constitution every day. And whether a court ever finds that or not, I don't know. But we've never had the idea in the 250 years of our country that a president could just decide on the tax rates of the country by an executive decree. But this is exactly what's happening right now. It's insane. So where does this leave Europe? I'm going to just renew my begging. Europe should be Europe. It should understand that Europe is very different from the United States. The values are different. The purposes are different. The social democracy is different. Europe should not try to become like the United States. If the United States says spend 5% of GDP on the military, that's probably the best indication to cut the military rather than to raise the military. If the US gives you a piece of advice, run in the opposite direction right now. The idea that Europe should arm itself is a craziness. Why should it arm itself? Oh, because we're in a war with Russia. Russia's about to invade. If European leaders were honest, they would explain to the public why this war with Russia took place. And it wasn't because Vladimir Putin is a mad imperialist who dreams of being Peter the Great. It was because the United States said that NATO must continue to march eastward to the Russian border, no matter what Russia says. And the European leaders know this. And they tried to stop it, by the way, in 2008. Mrs. Merkel told George Bush Jr., don't do this, George. This is dangerous. And Sarkozy told George Bush Jr., don't do this. This is dangerous. But the United States said, we're doing it, and you fall into line. And the European leaders went silent. Why exactly? I don't know. There's many theories about why the European leaders became so pathetic, silent in the face of wrong-headed American ideas. But be that as it may, to this day, Europe doesn't honestly explain the situation facing Europe. Europe, of course, should defend itself. It should have strategic autonomy. It should have its own foreign policy. It should have an army. No problem with that. But it doesn't need to be in conflict with Russia. Russia's not coming to invade Europe. Russia responded in Ukraine because the US made a coup in 2014, put in a Russophobic government, proceeded to arm it to create the largest army in Europe. And then when the Russian-speaking provinces demanded autonomy, just like South Tyrol, by the way, same issue, they demanded autonomy. The United States told them, you don't have to do that. You can attack them instead. And this is why this war came about. By the way, we were in Bolzano last year. It's a very satisfied and happy part of Italy. The autonomy really works. And the Minsk II agreement, which could have prevented war in Ukraine and which was negotiated in 2015 and voted by the UN Security Council, was modeled on South Tyrol. This is very interesting. It was literally modeled on South Tyrol. Why? Because Angela Merkel understood the South Tyrol situation, and she thought that would be a good solution for the Russian-speaking Donbass region as well. But the United States and this Russophobic government in Ukraine, which the United States installed in a coup on February 22nd, 2014, blocked the Minsk II agreement. What I'm saying is Europe needs diplomacy. It needs to work together with Russia to solve the security issues. It needs to discuss Russia's security needs and the security needs of the Baltic states and Poland and other frontline states. The Baltic states, by the way, need to behave better because these small states that have 25% of their population Russian speaking should not be cracking down on the Russian language, should not be outlawing Russian Orthodox churches, and should not be yelling at the Russians because they think the United States is going to save them. They should be behaving with respect to their large neighbor and discussing with their neighbor and respecting the rights of the Russian-speaking population, which happens to be about a quarter of the population in both Latvia and Estonia, and about 5% of the population in Lithuania. What I've observed close up and what I've been trying to say for years is that there has been no diplomacy. I know the Russian side, I know the Ukrainian side, I know the European side, I know Brussels. They don't talk to each other. They don't even sit down. Kaja Kallas meets 100 times with Zelensky, but not once with Lavrov. What kind of behavior is that? How possibly can there be peace in Europe if the external affairs high representative doesn't meet with her Russian counterpart? How can there be peace if there's no diplomacy? You really want to spend 800 billion euros on the military without trying to sit down once at the negotiating table? So that's my basic, pretty commonsensical point. Talk first, see how it goes. If it doesn't go great, okay, then spend $800 billion. But for heaven's sake, talk first. Europe hasn't tried diplomacy in years. Europe let everything be in the United States' hands. My crazy country.